Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Jillian, you there as well?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Mic check 2 1 2.
I see JMO out there too.
Oh yeah, getting everyone settled in. How's everyone's day? I know it's Monday afternoon.
Always crazy, right?
There we go. David, add a speaker. There we go. David, are you with us?
Yes, I am. How's it going?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's Monday in Miami, so no complaints over here. I think people are gonna kind of just start trickling in as they trickle in, so we can just kind of get started. And I think it would be best if maybe just want to do a quick round of intros from the speakers. So it looks like David, you're first on my list. So if we want to just go in order, I think that'll be easiest.
Cool. So name is David McDonald. I'm the founder of a company called Altered State Machine. That has recently done a little bit of a merger activity with a few other companies in the ecosystem, which now puts me as the Chief Innovation Officer for Futureverse. I think Shara's next on my list.
Yeah, Shara, you're next.
Great. Hey everyone, I'm Shara Senderoff, co-founder of Futureverse, and have had the pleasure of working with David over the last few years as an investor in Altered State Machine, and JMO and Jillian in investor capacity and in music industry capacity. So a friend of the whole panel and excited to be here.
Yes, big clapping emojis for sure. JMO?
Awesome. Jonathan Moore, also go by JMO. Been an investor at the Churning Group for about 2.5 years, specifically a founding member of our crypto team. We were very lucky enough to partner with ASM at their seed round, and just really, really excited to join the discussion and see how everyone's feeling and thinking about creativity and advanced tech. So happy to be here.
All right, Jillian, you want to end it off?
Save the worst for last.
No,
I'm Jillian Rothman. I don't go by J Rowe, but maybe I should. I am.
You probably should.
Yeah. Then it can be JMO and J. It'd be great. I'm the VP of New Business and Ventures over at Warner Music Group. So we are the team responsible for trying to forge new business models and new paths in emerging tech. And we also run our venture fund, which invested in ASM. And we invest alongside TCG a lot. So consider them great partners and great thinkers. So whatever JMO's thinking about and talking about, I usually want to be thinking about and talking about too. So really excited that I'm on the same panel as him because I'm doing something right.
Yes, definitely a powerhouse of people in the creative industry across founding and investors. So appreciate you all for being here. I think I kind of wanted to start with the cherry on top is David and Futureverse. You guys did a deal with FIFA, and now kind of the Futureverse, merger. Got a lot cooking over there. So I think, the crowd would love to hear about, how that FIFA deal came into play, any notes and exciting stories you'd want to share from the strategy and execution, and kind of, maybe what's on the plate for Futureverse coming up for people to look out for.
Yeah, so there's a lot coming up, and a lot that Shara will kill me if I talk about. The stuff that you do know about, like FIFA, for example, we've recently just released the beta of our mobile game with partnership with FIFA, and that's gone really well, been quite well received. The iOS version will be out soon, for people to test. Looking forward to the full launch of that shortly. I've got some feedback from the community enhancements that is going to make it pretty choice. Alongside that, we've got the upcoming release of the first bit of functionality for our collaboration with the Muhammad Ali Enterprises for the Muhammad Ali AI boxing game. The community's been really looking forward to getting their hands on the first bit of functionality there, and that shouldn't be too far away. So those are the two pretty big things on the horizon for gaming with Altered State Machine, and then we've got a whole bunch of other AI-related things that we've been working on that's quite interesting. As for FIFA, how that came about, that's kind of been really interesting journey for us. I started when I built the original prototype for ASM. I could have chosen kind of any number of little games to create, but I landed on soccer for no particular reason, and that kind of serendipitously sent us down on this path around AI sports, which when you look back on it, made a lot of sense. AI and the type of AI that we've been using and playing with kind of lends itself to these sorts of games, these sports orientated games, because you can take up the position of an AI manager. And when we got the opportunity to get our tech in front of FIFA team and show them what we got, that really appealed to them, because it opened up a new type of game that they hadn't been exposed to before, where you take up the role of a team manager and a coach, and you can have real involvement and impact on the outcome of your matches and what your players do, and then be able to see those matches play out live in real time, and they're not just procedural. They're actually, thinking about what they're doing. So that really, really interested them, the potential for the technology. So we decided, with not much time, just a matter of a few months, to put together a sort of a lightweight version of our game platform for them in the form of a mobile game, and see how that goes. And so far, it's been going pretty good.
Yeah, super exciting stuff. I mean, we were definitely all very excited to hear about it. And I know, Zara, you've been kind of, leading Futureverse, the merger. You guys are kind of all combining AI, Web3. Why don't you kind of share with the folks kind of how that came about, the thinkings behind it, and, kind of make some talking points on that. I think people would love to hear, kind of the origin of Futureverse from your side of things, from the leader.
Yeah, I think that I just want to add something to what David said too. I think what is great about the FIFA game is that we're looking at a component of Web3 and AI mobile gaming that is in a small group of leaders, given that the focus here is to make the technology invisible and to not make it cumbersome, and to allow for mobile gamers to go on and easily consume and easily engage in a product that will ultimately have all of the features that we're familiar with on the Web3 side. Obviously, we're rolling a bunch of those out as we go, but I think that there's a small group of people that have games out in this space, and we're really seeing a lot of positive feedback to the game, and the team is going to continue to iterate, as David said. And then I think just generally to speak to the AI side and some of the stuff that David's leading, the stuff that he commented that I would kill him if he spoke on, which some maybe, but not others. So I will speak to some of that a little, which is that I think, and I know that we're going to go here with this group over the next hour, but the goal of all of our AI tools that David is spearheading the team developing is to ultimately create very consumer friendly generative AI tools, not dissimilar from some of what we're seeing in the market, but others that allow someone to instantly come and create everything from objects to environments to animation to characters instantly in 3D, and allow those assets to be game ready for multiple interoperable environments that will continue to pop up everywhere we look over the next few years. And so I think that is a bit of where everyone knew we were headed, with ASM being a big component of Futureverse, but just confirming that that's very much where we're headed, and we can speak to a bit of that as we go in the conversation. But I would say that Futureverse as a whole, and I know there are a lot of people here that understand the vision, it's that ultimately we looked at the space to understand that there was a lot missing when it came to open metaverse infrastructure and the ability to create the underlying core platform and tools needed to allow developers to really create the experiences that they want in the metaverse, with a focus on true, simple user experience. And that's the overarching goal and vision of Futureverse, and the companies that we brought into the fold allow us to do that and bring those products to market quicker than we obviously would have been able to if they were separate companies focusing on separate initiatives. So we obviously have a lot to come, and we'll get into that more, but hopefully that was just a quick overview of who we are and where we're at.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, definitely super exciting to kind of see the merger come to life. And we'll definitely be waiting for more announcements for what can and can't be shared. You kind of touched on, AI, Web3. There's just a lot going on in the space right now. And, why I wanted JMO and Jillian on this as well from the investor side is that, they're working with founders across music, entertainment, fashion, things like that. And all of these founders and companies, if you will, have so much access to technology these days. They have AI, they have Web3, they have blockchain, they have Twitter, they have Instagram. Like, you have so many toolkits these days. So I'm just kind of would love to hear from JMO and Jillian, as you guys are out there working with your founders. I guess for Jillian, in your case, it could be musicians as well. How are you guys kind of managing all these toolkits? What are you kind of saying to your founders and portfolio companies as all of these new technologies come to life, in the creative space? Would love to hear kind of like how you guys are thinking about it, how you guys are managing, all of this tooling available, and, what you think these people can do with it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to share some initial thoughts, then pass it over to Jillian, who I'm sure is much closer than I am, given her seat. But it's an incredibly fascinating time. I feel like it can be very overwhelming on Twitter and online when, similar to the crypto euphoria that we saw in 2021, 2022, now there's this AI euphoria. And, there are people thinking nonstop of not only on the retail side of how can I use GPT to to increase my productivity during the day, but especially from the founder point of view, it's how much should I be leaning into AI, and how does it really impact my business? And I think a lot of stuff right now, I think, is still very much so in kind of a discovery mode. I think you're seeing a lot of investors kind of FOMO into deals to try and get more exposure, even not really realizing that, people like David have been spending decades, thinking about AI and how it will disrupt companies. And there's a lot of different pieces that we could, really discuss today. But I think at a really high level, it's important to level set around as a business, what is your key value proposition? And just because now we have this new technology, similar to the rise of the internet, I think it's, a lot of people, there's going to be fear that it's completely disrupting businesses entirely. But I think it's important to level set on, how this could be additive to what you are doing. And I think right now it's we're all generally in kind of that discovery mode, but it's important to not be too fearful that, everything you've been working on is completely mute or not relevant now that we have, GPT and, Midjourney and all these different tools all around us. And I think it's also pushing us to really, it's why I'm really excited to have Shara on and David on as well, and really speak to the infrastructure side. But I think it's also really pushing a lot of the assumptions we've had in this space for a really long time around distribution and value accrual. Now that, tools like AI are kind of bringing down that barrier to entry for what it means to create in any facet. So there's so many different pieces, but I think the first point is like, don't freak out. What you've been working on can still be valuable. I'm curious kind of what Jillian's saying now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak specifically just to one type of technology, because it's also sort of feels like when people were talking about Web3 and they were just like, let's do a Web3 project. And you were like, I don't know what that means. That's like saying, let's do an internet project. I sort of feel the same way about this conversation around, ML and AI in general, because it could be a million different things. Like, AI is Photoshop. AI is like when Google Ads tries to guess what your sentence is going to be. AI is spell checker, So obviously there are going to be really amazing tools to use that aren't, disruptive and scary. And then there are other things that are really exciting as well. And so I think we're in the knowledge gathering phase right now, just trying to understand what's out there, what's it's doing, who's doing it best, and kind of listening. It's like I feel like such a politician, like I hear you, but I think we are in like a very big listening stage right now of what is out there, what's working, what do people want these tools to be doing for them, both artists and fans and platforms, and then how do we build the appropriate both regulatory, licensing, and economic schema around it. Because I think there's no world in which we don't embrace these tools to some extent. So how do we do that in a way that honors creatives and actually like lets us get to a new level of creativity, as opposed to stealing or saturating the market with too much content.
Yeah, and you definitely bring up a good point, kind of figuring out, is this just an AI project? Am I doing this because it's hot? Am I launching a Web3 project because 8 months ago that was the thing to do as well? So I guess kind of David and Zara, when you were thinking out, the project before it came to life, what were kind of some of the things, I guess, on the conservative side, what were you guys looking out for? Was this supposed to be an AI project? Was this a Web3 project? Was this just a project that you felt needed to become to life? I think, when you guys were kind of scoping out the consumer space and things like that, what was kind of the initial, I guess, conversation as you guys were thinking about bringing these things to life? And, if you want to maybe touch on, what other founders, right? You guys have led pretty significant project with FIFA and some things to come to life as well. I think some of the people out here who are maybe considering launching a project of sorts would love to kind of hear, the do's, the don'ts, what to look out for, and things like that.
I think that, David, we could probably tag team this. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
I'll start with the altered state machine, and then we can go into Futureverse. So with altered state machine, that was never, so the original vision was around gamifying AI in a way that hadn't been done before, and a major component of that was the ownability of the AI and the tradability of the AI. When it came to choosing technologies that enabled that, Web3 technologies came along, and then suddenly the idea that I had been sort of maturing over probably a decade or so suddenly became possible. So it was kind of an evolution where the technology caught up to the idea, and then it was the right time and the right place to go and execute that idea. So it wasn't a matter of seeing this emerging market and saying, what can we do? It was finally the technology has gone to the point where this idea that had been maturing for quite a while was suddenly possible to start to try and do, which is the approach that we took with Altered State Machine. And I think you'll find a similar approach with a lot of the ventures that came into Futureverse, that this has been an idea that's that's been maturing for a long period of time, and now the technology has made it possible to execute it at scale. And this is where I'll hand over to Shara to talk more about Futureverse.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, and that was a big point that I was going to bring up too, which David mentioned, which is that you can't just, for sake of riding the trend of Web3 or AI, you can't just say, okay, we're doing this on Web3 just to do it. There has to be a value structure or a reason why the approach needs to be Web3 related, and I think, or Web3 utilized. And I think one of the things that is really important, and I want to segue this into what we're doing with AI music, because I think the point of where, when, and how the technology fits is really interesting on the music side, which is that, of course, there are Web3 solutions that can help a lot of the conversations around copyrights and rights management, but where in the sequencing that fits in is much later in the game than other components of technology in relation to what has to be solved for copyrights and key licensing and rights holders to receive the right compensation and the right framework for the utilization of their assets within the component and the complexity that is AI music. And so I think, to Jillian's point, when it comes to copyrights and licensing, and then to what Futureverse is doing on the AI music side, and I know all of the people in our community here are aware that we're up to something very significant in music and AI, and where we have begun the process has been that we've spent the last year, or maybe year and a half, frankly, I've spent the last 5 years on this with some key players in the music industry who we have now brought in to a venture within Futureverse that is tackling this quietly, and will bring it out in the not so distant future, where we're hyper focused right now on how copyrights train our AI. So we're not training it with anything that isn't licensed by the entity and the AI that we're putting it into. And that's something really, really important. And frankly, something in art, music, you name it, any of the AI tools that are out there, that has been a significant misstep, as we all know. If you're training it on something that is not licensed, it's going to infringe significant copyrights, and you're going to be screwed in the end. And so from a sequencing perspective, we're starting there, and then we go to maximize the capabilities of our AI tools, and then we integrate components of Web3 and blockchain into the mix. And so I think that's a sort of long-winded answer to your point, Ryan, that I think is really important, which is where, when, and how do you integrate Web3? It has to fit really organically into whatever the product is that you're putting into market. You can't just put it on a blockchain to put it on a blockchain. And I think, just wearing my investor hat, and I know Jillian and JMO and I all stand on this same point, which is how many people we've seen come through over the last 5 years. First, it was everyone added blockchain to their pitch decks. Now it's everyone has added AI to their pitch decks, whether or not they even have an AI component of their technology. So I think that there's no arguing that the trend is really hot right now, but I think the successful entities will figure out the right way to use it and not just use the technology for the technology's sake.
Yeah, and you definitely bring up a good point from the investing side, which I would love to hear. We could start with JMO. And, TCG actually, this is a crypto fund, but they do Web2 investments as well. And I think, JMO, you've been through multiple quote unquote hype cycles, if you will. When people are pitching you, when you guys are seeing deck, how are you guys from the investing side of things looking about this long term? How are you seeing, is this just an AI hype project, or is there something real? Was this just a Web3 project, or was it a hype project? Like, it must be tough for you guys as investors, and having people constantly come to you with the next big thing and try to sort out what's real and what's not. I'd love to kind of hear, how you guys are viewing decks, how you guys are meeting founders, and what's the thought process long term.
100%. I mean, I think it, for me, it directly goes to what Shara mentioned around like thinking through the purpose of this tech. And I think a really, really good example in crypto that we see a lot, if I'm just going to specifically say in that box, is around like decentralization. Like, I think especially during the crypto hype cycle, it was like, this is going to be decentralized and it's going to be this new product. People are like, amazing, like, great, decentralization, let's do it. But I think it's kind of like doing the mental work to understand, like, well, why do we want something to be decentralized in the first place? Like, what's beneficial? And I think once you start to unpack that as like a concept, it's really easy to understand what kind of businesses are compelling versus not. And so I think specifically for decentralization, it's like we'd want something to be decentralized so there is transparency and censorship resistance. And it's like, all right, there's a lot of obvious examples in the world today where censorship resistance is a really, really important part, you know, of like how someone attributes value or is excited about a product, can trust a product, right? Like, can this just be altered or not? And so I think you can apply the same process, I think, for any emerging technology, which is like, what's really the genesis reason for why this is like interesting? And I think it's why we're so excited about ASM and Futureverse, because now that there's all these new ways that you can, you know, everything that we do online increasingly has a larger and larger impact that's outsized in our real world. And people are spending, you know, $500,000 on like a CSGO skin for a game. But it's like now, you know, we could have an AI game where not only can, you know, the assets that I'm spending all this time on in the game, you know, like I know for a fact I own those because they're on the blockchain, this immutable data source. But now through AI, right, instead of me having to go and like, you know, play a ton of games and not really having an efficient way to log my learnings or actually know if that's going to have a tangible impact to like the next time I go to play, right, I can, you know, hopefully train my characters and get learnings in ways that I would only be accessible through this combination, right, of AI and crypto. So I think it's like, for me, for any emerging tech, it's trying to get like under the hood of what's the ultimate purpose for why this is valuable. And I think that helps you go even deeper into what kind of companies and businesses, you know, that you really want to go back at like a pre-seed and seed stage. I specifically thought, you know, an AI NFT company out of New Zealand was one that made sense, but I'll be curious what other people think. But for me, that's like the core aspect is really trying to get under the hood around the purpose for this phase.
Before I continue, a quick word from our sponsors that make the show possible.
Introducing Fraz Cola, the world's premier beer-flavored beverage.
It's Fraz, delicious, highly nutritious with a top-secret recipe that's so delicious.
Nothing beats the buzz of a cool Fraz Cola. What are you waiting for?
We're getting Fraz to the NAS!
Consume at your own risk. Symptoms may include and death.
Yeah, and Jillian, would love to hear just, you know, kind of your, I guess, notes and thoughts as you guys have kind of figured out this space. You guys have an accelerator. You guys have made, you know, some pretty exciting checks into later stage companies. JustX being one of them. I think we all kind of know JustX and they're out there crushing it. So would love to just kind of better understand from your guys' side of things, from a record label to a fund. How are you guys kind of, you know, viewing the investment space and trying to recognize what's hype, what's not? We'd love to hear, you know, from your side of things on how you're thinking about it.
Yes, so we are focused on a handful. I mean, it's not like a secretive thesis, you know. We're focused on a few different areas. Definitely the way people are spending and fans and consumers are spending more time in virtual and digital spaces and how that transcends into the way they express digital and virtual identity. So really interested in what in how artists can provide experiences and products to fans so that they can express fandom and find like-minded fans. So anything from wearables to emotes to badges and passes and POAPs and things like that. And so that's sort of the virtual identity part. And then the actual platforms and spaces on which that happens, we're really interested in and both partnering with and investing in and even sometimes developing ourselves. So, you know, the music industry is shifting from sort of a song economy or a playlist economy into a fan or community-based economy where engagement, interactivity, monetization is really the future of fandom. And so we're really interested in where that's happening and how. And then that's sort of the more front-end user-focused partners and investments. And then the back end, the same sort of like, what is the infrastructure that that supports this, whether it's a Web3 tech stack or a POAP or an AI model, and then also what are the tools that allow people to create on those platforms or those types of products. So DressX is an example of kind of both, because they are building the actual ecosystem and the products themselves, but they also have proprietary AR tools and technologies as well. And then ASM is also a really good example, because Futureverse and ASM check a lot of those boxes, right? They're building out products that help you express identity. They're building out gamified experiences. They're actually building out the platforms and distribution that happens on, tools for creators to do it themselves within those platforms, and then also the actual ecosystem infrastructure that supports it all. So they're kind of a great investment for us, because it's a little bit of everything. But those are kind of the areas that we focus on for our investment thesis. I mean, that's not, a secret. I think it's obvious based on what we've invested in. But partnerships, where we can be even more experimental, really looking for people who are proving out new models, new ways to connect, new ways to create incremental revenue streams for our artists. And that can be, in any space, from AR to gaming to social to fitness. All of those things are areas that we focus on.
Yeah, and definitely kind of on the metaverse side of things, having all of those things actually be executed into the metaverse. Just wanted to give you a big shout out, Jillian, for kind of spearheading the metaverse NFL performance. If anyone did not see that, you guys should definitely check it out. That was super exciting to see, where you see all of this tech really come together right across metaverse and Web3, and all these things really execute at the highest level. And so, yeah, just kind of wanted to give a shout out to Jillian and the Warner Music team for kind of leading that NFL metaverse project. Yeah, I should definitely check it out. David, I guess kind of want to bring it back to you on that note. As you guys are kind of thinking about spearheading the next couple projects, we've kind of seen, I would argue, a little bit of a lull of people, staying in the metaverse. We don't really have to decide on if it's dead or not type thing. But as you guys are building out, kind of the next couple projects, how are you guys thinking about in real life activations, metaverse activations? I think there's going to have to be a balance moving forward. So, what are you guys kind of seeing as you guys are looking to go to market with a couple ASM projects or Futureverse projects? How are you guys analyzing and thinking about, in real life versus metaverse, and where's kind of your opinion and thoughts on metaverse going forward?
So I've always had probably a different view on what the metaverse is, and it's pretty consistent with the Futureverse ecosystem, I think, and maybe Shara can come in here off the back of my comments. But I don't think the metaverse is a place that you go. It's not an application. I think it is it's a deeper, more immersive experience, digital experience that goes across many applications. So I think the way that a lot of people have been looking at the metaverse is trying to make a mega app that everybody ends up in and tries to do everything for everyone. It's possibly not been the correct approach. The way that I've approached it with Altered State Machine and part of the reason for a lot of the design decisions around interoperable assets is that the kind of much like the Futureverse trailer is that you're already there, you're already in the metaverse experiencing it. It's about deepening it, making that connection deeper and making that immersiveness deeper, and spaces for communities to thrive. And that's what we're we've been creating with the experiences that we're trying to create is the interconnectivity between applications and between assets and between people, is what is creating the metaverse. It's kind of like saying, going back a few decades and saying, I'm going to create an internet. There's no an internet, there's just the internet. It is sort of this immersive space where everybody interacts and builds together. It's not something that, somebody didn't just go and decide to make an app. That was an internet. That was a thing that emerged and it was kind of co-created by everybody involved. And I think that's the way you got to look at metaverse. When you're talking about metaverse, there's not going to be an app. That is the metaverse. I think it's going to be an immersive digital space.
That was spot on, so I don't have much to add. You can tell that we all work together on our vision, but David very beautifully articulated exactly what we believe, that the metaverse is not a place but possibility. And that's how we see our vision for Futureverse and sort of the aggregation of all of the companies that we've brought under the umbrella, and how we'll put out all of their technology in the form of tools that enable developers, humans, creators to create the experiences and the worlds they imagine, and to do that with a seamless toolkit that makes it something that doesn't take 10 years to create something that they envision in their mind, but instead can take at times even seconds or minutes with some of the AI prompts that will allow you to create using our AIs that will roll out over the next year. So I think that that's the best example, as we view the metaverse as simply the next version of the internet that has tweaks and value systems. And the way that we're looking at our technology stack is in the form of both an underlying core platform, which will speak a lot to the Root network, and I know Aaron is speaking about that in a couple minutes after this Twitter Spaces, but that the Root network being sort of the underlying core platform, and then on top of that being our Futureverse operating system tools. And that's a bit of how we speak to us putting our technology into the hands of builders so they can build the future. And that's why at Futureverse, our whole positioning and view of the world is we're not building the future, everyone else is. And so that's what we stand for, is giving everyone the tools to create those immersive experiences that David just beautifully articulated.
Yeah, that's definitely like a super interesting point, and would definitely love to hear, JMO, I guess, from what you guys are kind of seeing out there. All of these tools, I think, has really kind of exploded the creator economy as well. Giving people access to what I would call industrial level technology in the palm of their hands. Are you guys excited about the creator economy with all of this technology? Do you see people creating in real life? Do you see people creating in the metaverse? Like, what does it mean to kind of invest in the creator space? And what are you seeing now that people have access to all of this, industrial level technology?
Yeah, I think, definitely +1 to how David framed it. I think we have like a very similar view in-house. My point of view is just a lot of this is going to be like net additive. And now that we have, new tech, it's definitely like a time to think about, I think, how efficient we're being, and how, if we view the tech as tools, like, why do we need, how can we use these tools to our best ability? I think the creator economy is in like the metaverse, where I think, areas that started to see a lot of hype around just the initial value proposition, that, now we can put, more ownership and more of an onus in the hands of creators, and kind of have a much more like, established direct to consumer experience. I think a lot of the last decade plus of like consumer investing is really looking at, how we can go D2C. But I think now that, we have NFTs that can kind of change the relationship from, purely having like a social relationship with a company or creator to a socio-economic relationship. It can be like a tighter value or creative loop. And I think we see that it's difficult because I think in crypto, we oftentimes see financial speculation before product development. And I think, obviously we all know our fair share of products and, launches that kind of took advantage of that notion over the last 2 years. But now we're kind of like, I think we're as like a whole ecosystem focusing back on, how can creators really expand these tools in ways that improve the business model side. So for us, that's where a lot of the emphasis comes, and it's why we're so excited about all these emerging areas, because we think they're much more than just what the initial value proposition might appear to be. So like, if we're going to stick on NFTs, I think NFTs are a really cool example where we can really unpack distribution in a way that we haven't seen, on the internet so far, as a result of people now having this socioeconomic loop with like a direct-to-consumer experience. So we're really, really excited about, I think, the creator economy and the impact all this tech might have.
Yeah, and Jillian, I mean, you kind of have the lucky blessing of working with companies and working with musicians as well. I don't want to categorize musician as kind of the creator economy, but they are in a sense kind of launching their own brand, or they're working on brand partnerships. Like what has kind of been, some of the conversations or chatter about musicians kind of taking back the power, right? I know you've kind of spoke a lot about that, especially panels that I've seen you speak on. I've seen you speak quite a lot these days. What are musicians and kind of what is the artist realm of things saying, and launching their own brands, using all these tools to kind of take back control? Is there kind of a good sense of steam going around, or musicians, do you think, kind of still figuring out how a lot of this technology actually integrates into their creative thinking, right? These are artists at heart, and so I'm just kind of curious as to how you viewed art, the essential of creating something and merging with futuristic tech. Like, what are the artists kind of saying? And I guess what's kind of your thoughts on bridging the gap between true art creation and merging it with really futuristic technology?
I mean, I think it ranges with how different artists feel about it and how much they want to embrace it. And I think we're just going to learn over time. Some will and some won't. It's like any other new form of expression or new type of technology. Some people will incorporate it into their artistic processes and some people won't. I think for us, like, the big thing is just making sure that we have tools for artists if they want to, and that we're appropriately working with our partners across the industry to protect their IP, if necessary. But we're all gonna figure it out together, right? But I think some artists are super stoked, and some artists are curious, and some artists might not even really be following at all. So that's a terrible answer, I know, but it is the truth.
No, I totally understand. We definitely all are going to figure this out together. I know we're kind of running up on time, but Shara, if you maybe wanted to just comment a little bit on that as well, kind of given your background in Raised in Space, if anyone in the crowd is not familiar with Raised in Space, part of SU Projects, and they've had the pleasure of working with a lot of up-and-coming artists as well. What is some of the conversations you've had with your artists and how you guys are thinking about launching? Are some of the people interested in bringing this new tech into their creative thinking? Do they not like it? I guess what's kind of your view and some of the conversations you've been involved in with some of your artists launching? How are they kind of in taking all of this new technology into their creative processes?
So I think that what Jillian said is spot on. And I think that that's like anything. When Napster came out as sort of the last big, massive disruption to the music industry, I think what is going on now is as big as that. I think that right now artists are paying attention, definitely more so than not. And obviously a lot of the Drake AI songs that went out got everyone's attention. So I think for the most part, everyone's starting to say, like, do I have to participate in this? How do I participate? And I think the challenge really is that there isn't a way for them to participate. The Grimes example is a really very, very unique one in that Grimes and her manager are very tech forward and are capable of spinning up something super quickly, super fast, like they did, to allow people to start to experiment with her voice. And she, of course, was the first one to say, go take it and do what you want. And for a bit of time, probably the first few days, there were very few artists or creators that could go take that. Obviously, we saw Angel Baby do something interesting because of the writing team that is behind Angel Baby was able to get in the studio and spin something up with Grimes' voice. But the fact that there's very few next steps for, okay, now how do I utilize that, shows that there are a lot of things that have to happen before there's a capability to run wild with this stuff. Now, it will happen very quickly. It's not going to take a year to put it in artists' hands, but I do think that there's an interesting conversation brewing from the way I see artists talking, in that a lot of their creativity, especially the younger artists in the industry today, they came up on using pretty advanced technology to create a lot of their music. For the most part, there's a good group of artists that are big today that made all of their music on their laptop or with a friend that was a producer on their laptop and no instruments. So I think there's definitely differing opinions that are coming from different places as to how people came into the music industry. But I think the infusion of technology is not unfamiliar to a lot of artists. It's just them trying to wrap their heads around whether or not they're getting taken advantage of like they are used to, and whether there's going to be a model for compensation that will allow them to open up their minds to creativity in a way that could be more open and less fearful. But I think Jillian's point is right. It's some people are going to be for it and some people are just never going to be for it. And that's creative subjectivity and personal choice. So, but I do think that people are paying attention now, and that's what we want. That starts to fuel the innovation that everyone wants to see.
Yeah, and I mean, I think your note on kind of the younger generation growing up with technology is so spot on. I mean, we have Ableton, people are rarely playing instruments anymore, and there's kind of a lot of that digital sound, and I think it's only going to get stronger. So I think you're pretty spot on that we've already been using this technology, and once you kind of digest that it's maybe not something new, it's just framed a little bit differently, the expectations are kind of endless. I know you guys have your guys' one coming up in just a second. So maybe David, if we want to just end it with one more question with you, and then we'll let you guys run. The Drake situation came up, the Grimes situation came up. What are kind of your thoughts on, as you guys release new projects and new IP, are you for kind of the copyright and allowing people to use it as long as you guys are getting paid? Are you guys protective? Like, how are you guys kind of viewing the trademark side of things as you guys are thinking about product launch, brand launch, new IP, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it's important. It's always been an important sort of, not just philosophy, but sort of moral standpoint from Altered State Machine is that, and mission is that the originators and the people and the creators should be part of the process and should be compensated, in a fair way for their contribution to the process. And that's kind of been the core of Altered State Machine technology, is the people who contribute to the AI, who are training it or providing data to it, are the ones that are able to reap the benefits from that AI. And that was the entire point about bringing sort of Web3 technologies like NFTs into what we were building, because that enabled us to have a record of the origins of the AI and the data and the technology, which enables us to create this economy where everything flows back to the originators. So supporting the creator economy and the creators themselves is kind of the core of our approach to artificial intelligence from the beginning. And we think that we're pretty willing to stick to our guns on that one, and we think that's the way that the lens that we should be looking at how these technologies get adopted in the future. So we're going to continue pushing down that path and enabling technologies and creating technologies that enable people to do that.
Yeah, and again, just wanted to thank everyone for being on this Spaces. We could spend an entire night talking about AI and Web3. The Futureverse team is having another Twitter Spaces right after this, so you guys should definitely go check that out. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other topics covered as well. JMO and Jillian, thank you guys for tapping in. Such a big fan of you guys, your funds. I mean, you guys are arguably one of my favorites in the consumer space, if not my favorite. So really appreciate you guys making the time and joining the discussion. Definitely make sure to check out what TCG is doing. Warner Music is always up to something crazy, so I'm sure Jillian will have some new and fun stuff to check out in the future. One last little comment, I guess, is that if any of you founders are out there, we've partnered with Farfetch and we got some other cool things coming as well. So if you're out there and you're thinking, hey, I could build something or I could do this, we are one of the largest Web3 accelerators. So definitely feel free to check us out if you're interested in working with us or being around cool people like this on the Twitter Spaces. So I will end it with that. One last reminder, go check out Futureverses. And thank you guys for attending.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and maybe consider watching one of my other videos. Bunnies up!